Provinces are expanding access to fourth doses of COVID-19 vaccines and therapeutic drugs as this latest wave brings case numbers to record highs. It comes as several provinces are set to lift even more public health measures in the coming weeks and right before a long weekend. Joining us now is infectious disease specialist Dr. Isaac Bogosh. Good morning to you.
Hey, good to see you, Anne-Marie.
Vaccines were originally billed as our ticket out of this pandemic. More than 85% of Canadians have received 2 doses. Yet in the province of Ontario, cases are higher than they've ever been. We're still being encouraged to wear our masks, and even the vaccinated we know are ending up in the hospital. So what would you say to people who are asking, why bother with more doses?
Well, I think what's happened, obviously, over the last year is we've seen this virus mutate and change, and the protective benefit of the vaccine is still there. It's just receded a little bit. But I think it's still fair to remember that the vaccines do a remarkable job in keeping people out of hospital. And that third dose, especially in older cohorts, but that third dose really goes a long way in keeping people well and keeping people out of hospital. Now, it might not protect against getting the infection as much as it has in the past, but it really does a lot of heavy lifting, keeping people from becoming seriously ill. And that's why it's a really good idea, if people are eligible for that third dose, to go and get it.
Ontario expanding access to COVID-19 therapeutic drugs. Who will be affected by the changes?
So this is really good. We're starting to see decentralization of these drugs. Before, it was somewhat confusing about who was eligible and where you could get it. And now they're expanding it to over 4,000 pharmacies in the province who will be carrying these medications. I think there's still obviously some hurdles, and people need to have a prescription and get timely access to a testing and a prescription in time. But there's just more places to access these medications. Based on what we know today, these drugs really help prevent those at highest risk from hospitalization from getting sick enough to land themselves in hospital. So based on what we know today, that's who would benefit most from that. But of course, there's some very good studies that are ongoing, and perhaps the eligibility can expand in the future if it would benefit others for other reasons, maybe lowering symptoms, maybe lessening transmission. Those are still unknown. So for now, it really is for those at highest risk of hospitalization, and it will help keep people out of hospital.
Dr. Bogosh, we're also seeing an increase in COVID-19 reinfections, people who contract this virus twice. What are your concerns around that trend?
This has been known for a while. We've known people can get reinfected with this virus. And I think what happened was we saw a lot of people who had a prior infection. And then, of course, Omicron came around in late December and really took off in January and February, and a lot of people were infected. I mean, depending on which part of the world you're looking at, anywhere from 25% to a third, maybe even more of various provinces or countries were infected with Omicron. And of course, that included a lot of people who had been infected prior with another variant. What's interesting now is there's emerging data, again, it's incomplete, is that if someone had an Omicron infection in January or February, it's actually pretty unlikely that they'll get another infection right now. It can happen, but it's unlikely. But if you had an infection with a prior variant, yeah, absolutely, you can get this. This really chips away at the immunity we had from either vaccination or infection, and that's why we're seeing so much reinfection with this.
We were talking yesterday about COVID complacency and people who say they want to skip this 4th shot in an effort to either gain natural immunity or because the shot made them feel worse than getting COVID did. What will the future waves look like if less people intend to take this 4th dose?
Yeah, so I think it's also fair to recognize, too, that based on the data we have to date, the 4th dose really will have the most benefit in an older, frail population or a severely immunocompromised population. I don't think we can expect miracles based on the data we have now with, a much broader expansion. We just have to go by the data we have. And of course, that data changes with time. But I think your point is also important because it raises a communication issue. And I think we really have to be very engaged with the entire population, not just select segments of the population, and keep people up to date on what's happening, what's real, what's new in the world of COVID, what are the public health recommendations, and really engage the population. And of course, that means doing it in an age, culture, and language appropriate manner because we have a very diverse population here in Canada and we have to speak to everybody.
Well, and I want to pick up on that point of communication because we see what the science table is saying and they, they're sending out other social media feeds and we get access to that information. But when the province still hasn't put back in place masking mandates and the health recommendations are recommending that we mask, I think that that's where the confusion comes for people. Who do we listen to?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's divergent opinions on multiple platforms, and having some synchrony in those opinions would go a long way. Safe it to say, hey, there's a lot of COVID out there. Just because there isn't a mandate, I mean, it doesn't mean you shouldn't wear a mask. Quite the opposite. We actually heard from the Chief Public Health Officer of Ontario yesterday saying you should wear a mask. Not everyone, but most people in medicine and public health and science are saying you should wear a mask indoors, especially during this wave. I think that message is clear. People should wear a mask indoors, especially during this wave. Having said that, there isn't a mandate. And I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's your choice, you can make the right decision here and put on a mask. There's a lot of COVID out there. The mask will really go a long way in protecting the individual and, of course, those around you. I think it's a no-brainer. Put a mask on.
All right, that is the doctor's advice. Thanks so much, Dr. Bogosh.
Have a good day.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.